everybody, my name is Calvin69. Welcome back to another video. Today in this one is going to be another tier list video, and in this one it's going to be my tier list on meta staples post Supreme Darkness. Yes, Supreme Darkness released last week, and with YCS Orlando in a couple days, staples are shifting around just because there are new decks in the format thanks to something like Supreme Darkness. And well, YCS Orlando always brings out the top, YCS in general bring out the top competitiveness and people willing to try stuff to try to do their best at the YCS. So in this video we do have a lot of cards to talk about. I think it's like I think it's 61 is what I counted the last time I counted. So we have 61 cards to talk about, but today we're talking about the meta staples, and then after YCS Orlando that happens this week, we'll talk about the meta decks as well. So meta decks will be next week. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video, shall we? So again, our little tier list things here is most main decks, some main decks, most side decks, some side decks, and then the niche category as well. We'll start off with the Charmies. I will start off with Purulia. So if you haven't tuned into the channel in a couple weeks, I actually covered all three Mulcharmies in their own dedicated video. If you want to watch those videos, I'll put it in the link in the description down below. Now I put Purulia as the worst one, but I think you actually might see this in some side decks going into this format, just because, well, Mulcharmy Meowls seems to be, the deck that might be the most popular going into this format, and if they're going to be summoning from the hands a lot, Mulcharmy Purulia is always going to be good, especially with something like just Meowls in general. Like, it has a hard time with Purulia, but adding the Mulcharmy stuff in there as well makes it where Purulia could be a problem. But the Mulcharmy stuff can play around it by like getting to the ritual spell, and if they already have the ritual monster, they can summon from deck, and then they don't really have to summon from the hand. Now I do think I maybe gave it a little bit of discredit. I think it's a little bit better than I was thinking of initially like 2 weeks ago, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as much. Maybe you'll see it in most side decks, but I don't think, of course this isn't a main deck card, I don't think this will ever be a main deck card, but I can see it in some side decks for sure. Fuwalos is still Fuwalos. I still think you're going to see this in most main decks if people are going to play it, just because, I mean, it's the best maxi replacement that we do have in the TCG. So yeah, for sure, this is going to be in most main decks for sure. If you do play this will never see the side. Again, Fuwalos is just a really, really good card in general. And then the new Mulcharmy Meowls. This is a hard one to say where it's going to be at. I'm going to put it in most side decks right now, just because, again, we're early in the format right now, so not that many people have their hands on this card yet, but it hasn't been as good as I think people want it to be. Maybe you'll see it in some side decks where it's with Purulia. I'm going to put it with most side decks right now because there's a lot of things in this format, the Summoning from Grave and the Banishment, so it makes it where it's actually pretty good, but people are preferring just to stick with the Fuwalos, and that's pretty much it. Like against the Malice matchup, they'll just stick with the Fuwalos and then like Lancia, and that's kind of their 6 cards to the Malice matchup or something like that. But I'm going to still put it in most side decks for right now. This might be dropping lower later on, the more later we get into the format, so just kind of keep that in mind. Now to the actual proper hand traps. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring I think is always going to be in most main decks. I think this is going to see more play than Fuwalos. I think it's maybe a little bit worse just because Mulcharmy Meowls makes it where it's really hard to determine where to Ash in that deck, and against like something like a Malice deck, where if they're playing like the Abaku and stuff like that, it's hard to Ash in that deck as well, because a lot of the time you wanted to save the Ash against Malice, hit the MTB07 so they didn't banish a card or something like that, but maybe that's not correct anymore. We're going to keep this in most main decks. It is falling off, but it's always Ash Blossom. If you're going to play it, you're going to be playing it in the main deck for sure. It's probably the best hand trap, except for one. I think there is one better one, but for sure Ash is going to be in most main decks. Spooky Dogwood, again, this is for time reasons. This is the only reason why it's in here. It's going to be in some side decks for sure. I'm going to actually put it there. Yeah, it's just a time card. That's all it needs to be. People, like, if they're going second, at least they have some sort of option to win in time with Spooky Dogwood. So yeah, this will for sure stay in some side decks. Ghost Bell. I think a lot of people might be tinkering with this card. This isn't terrible of a card. I think it's a lot worse. I don't think it's the greatest in the world. If you're going to play it, you're probably going to be in some main decks, but I don't think you're going to really side deck Ghost Bell at all. It's hard to say because it's a good card, don't get me wrong, but I want to put it more in the niche category because you're never going to side deck the Ghost Spell, so there's no point of putting it here. But do you really want to main deck Ghost Spell this format? I don't really think so. I don't really think Ghost Spell is the greatest in the world, but I don't know. This is kind of a rough choice. I'm going to put it in niche. I'm not saying it's a bad card. I still think it's a very, very, very good card, but I just don't see people trying to main deck Ghost Bell, and there's no point to side deck Ghost Bell either, so I'm going to put it in niche for now. Ghost Oregon Snow Rabbit. A lot of people gave me shit in the last one because I forgot to put this in here, but I finally put this in here. You're going to see this in some main decks. I don't think it's as popular as it was in the last format, just because there's a lot more stuff happening in this format thanks to Supreme Darkness releasing like the Eclipse Twins and the Mitsuragi stuff. But you will probably see it in some main decks for sure. Being able to hit the duo drive is still really, really good. Being able to hit like a Link 2 like Splash Major Haggard against the Mouse deck is really good as well. I think it's a little bit worse this format, but it's still pretty decent as well. Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. I'm sorry, you're niche. It's not that good this format. Again, like maybe because Detonator's in the format, being able to hit Detonator, but a lot of the Rizal stuff isn't on pure Rizal anymore. They're playing other engines with it, so they don't necessarily need Detonator. Detonator is still a very powerful card, don't get me wrong, but I don't think people are really going to be playing Ghost Reapers and Winter Cherries for that reason. So we're going to put it in niche for sure. Effect Veiler. This one's weird. I really am not a fan of Effect Veiler. I think it's just worse Imperm, but it's still a really good hand trap, being able to, Veiler like a duo drive or, even like a normal summon or anything like that. It's still really, really good. Don't get me wrong. I think there's just better hand traps than it right now, just because, I don't know. I've never been a fan of Veiler. I still think it's a good hand trap. Don't get me wrong. If you're playing a deck that can play 20 hand traps, you'd probably play Veiler. But I don't know. I've never really been a fan of Effect Veiler. But we'll keep it in most main decks. If you're probably playing Veiler, you're going to most likely main deck it. Infinite Impermanence is 100 times better than Effect Veiler. And this is probably the best hand trap you can be playing in the format as well. I think it's better than Ash Blossom. It being a trap makes it where it plays around something like a triple tactic talents. You can use it going second, which is really, really good. I think Imperm is just really good. I'm going to be honest with you. So we're going to put Imperm in most main decks. It's probably the best hand trap you could be playing right now. Droll and Lockbird. I think it's because we're early in the format, but I think Droll is really, really good. I think you're going to probably see this in some main decks. You probably won't see it in most main decks. A lot of people might be side decking this card. This is probably like some main decks, most side decks kind of thing. But I'm going to put it in some main decks. I think Droll is a really, really powerful card in this format just because it already did somewhat stop the Rizal matchup in the first place. And now if they're playing the Mitsuragi stuff on top of it, Droll just completely turns off that part of the engine, which is really, really good and why I think this is really good. But the problem with Droll and Lockbird is if you verse something like a Malice matchup, Droll does absolutely nothing against the Malice matchup. But it just depends on what you're trying to expect for something like YCS or Lender. Are you expecting more Rizal or Malice? Probably going to be expecting more Rizal, right? So Droll and Lockbird, I do believe belongs in the some main deck categories. Nibiru the Primal Being, I think is still in the main deck, but it is kind of falling off. A lot of people are figuring out lines to make sure they play around Nibiru as much as possible. So it makes it where it's not the greatest hand trap anymore. It is falling off, in my opinion, since the last time we talked about this card. I still think it's better than Veiler, but I don't think it's better than Fuwalos, Ash, or Imperm. Again, it is still a very good hand trap. Don't get me wrong. If you pair it with another hand trap, that's where it gets really good. But if it's just Nibiru by itself, I don't think it's getting that much value out of it anymore. So I'm going to keep this in most main decks, but it is somewhat falling off. So if you don't see this in some list anymore, don't be surprised. Dimension Shifter. If you play it, like the Shifter is a weird one because it's not really getting played in this format, just because the top two decks in the format don't necessarily care about Shifter. Like Malice just goes, okay, thank you for making everything extenders. Rizal's like, it's bad, but they're still going to make a Detonator on top of it, and Detonator is still Detonator, right? And you probably got to back up with some hand traps as well. So I'm going to actually put this in most side decks, because a lot of Malice players are side decking this option just so they have it. I don't know. If you're playing it, it's probably in some main decks. I don't know. This is a really rough decision because it's not the greatest thing anymore right now in this format. Don't get me wrong, it's still decent, but it's not the best thing you can be playing right now. I don't know. If you're playing it, you're probably going to be playing it in the main deck. So I'll keep it in some main decks, but I don't know. I'm going to actually put this in most sides because a lot of the Malice players are side decking Shifter. They're not main decking Shifter anymore. So I'm going to put this in most side decks just because a lot of the top decks that are playing it, like Malice, are side decking it, and if you're rogue, like everything else that is playing shifter is in the rogue category right now. Gamma, I'm sorry, you are niche. I wish if this was at 3, you're probably up here. To be fair, if you are at 3, you're probably up here. But you're at 1, so I'm sorry that makes you where it is just a niche card, just because you have to play the brick and driver, so you're only playing 1 and 1. There's a lot more likely of a chance for you, or well, the same amount of chance of you drawing driver as then drawing gamma. So I'm going to keep this in the niche category. Unfortunately, I do think it's a very, very good hand trap, but the fact that you have to play the brick with it and it's only at 1 makes it where I think it just belongs in the niche category. Delta, this is a little bit better than gamma because at least you can play 3 of this, but I don't think you're going to be seeing much of this card in the next format. You're probably going to, I don't even think it's in some side decks anymore, to be honest. I think it's probably in the niche category as well, just because I don't really think Delta is that good in this format. There's not that many like powerful spells going first. That's because, you know, the powerful one was like OSS before it got banned, but now OSS is banned. So I don't know, this is like a niche in my opinion. I think Gamma is better, but obviously Gamma's at 1. Lancia, this is in most side decks for sure. This is for the Malice matchup, exactly, and that's pretty much it. That's why it's in the most main decks. You're going to see it in every single side deck that you're going to see this next weekend for topping list. We'll see Lancia in the side deck, just because this does shut down Malice. So yeah, for sure going to keep in most side decks. Chaos Hunter is a little bit worse. You'll probably see it in some side decks if people are really scared of Malice, but I don't think you should be really expecting this, because this has a lot more outs to it, unlike Lancia, because it hits the field, so something like Droplet can negate this as well. So I don't know, this isn't the greatest in the world, and you have to wait for them to special summon first as well to summon out this guy. Next thing up are the Bystials. I think the Bystials are getting just a tad bit worse. Don't get me wrong, I still think they're very good. I think they're going to be in some main decks for sure. I think they're a little bit worse compared to what the last format was offering, just because, again, the Ryzel matchup is playing a lot more other engines in the deck, makes it where the Bystials are a little bit worse. Obviously, this is good against the Fiendsmith stuff, which a lot of people are probably going to be playing in this next format, but I don't know. I think this is somewhat falling off. Still pretty decent, don't get me wrong, but I think it is somewhat falling off. So we're going to keep this in some main decks. DD Crow is just strictly worse than Bystials. I'm sorry, Bystials are better. DD Crow belongs in the niche category, because if you're going to play something like a DD Crow, you'd much rather just play the Bystial instead. Token Collector, there's nothing in the format that's summoning tokens, so there's really no point to play Token Collector, so I'm going to put this in niche as well. It's probably a lot worse. I'm going to put it down here. Dominus Impulse. Not every deck can play this, and a lot of the decks that could play this aren't really playing. Like Malice, it's a little bit rough because you have to play like pure Malice for you to play this. It's not in the greatest position right now. It's gonna probably, if you're gonna play it, you are gonna main deck it. They're not gonna see it in the side for sure. I'm gonna put this in some main decks, because if you are playing it, you are main decking it. But don't be surprised if you don't see that much of this card. I still think this card is fucking ridiculous, but obviously there's not them, like Ryzel can't play this whatsoever because it turns off the attributes for them. Malice is really the only one that can do that, but a lot of the Malice players might be tending to switch towards Fiendsmith because of Abaku, so or Abao, sorry, I think that's the proper name of that card. But yeah, I think Impulse is still good. I think you'll see it in some main decks, but besides that, it's not going to go anywhere else. Purge is kind of in the same other thing. I think Impulse is better than it, but Purge is just a strictly worse Ash Blossom. But decks like Voiceless Voice are obviously going to play this deck, but Voiceless Voice is more in the rogue category. Like Castria Fiendsmith, I think, can play this as well. Or Magical Musket Fiendsmith as well could play this if they really want to, but I don't know. It's just a strictly worse version of Ash Blossom in my opinion, but it's still pretty decent. Ash is still Ash Blossom, right? Dominus Impulse, Rescue Ace Impulse, sorry. Yeah, this is a niche, I'm sorry. This isn't the greatest in the world right now, but I do believe this will eventually do something in Yu-Gi-Oh! Just, it's not there just yet. Phantasme, I think you can see this in some side decks. For sure, if like the people that don't have the Charmies on hand, they'll play the Phantasmes instead, because there's a lot of links. Like if you play like the Fiendsmith Ryzel deck, Phantasme can hit that. Something like Malice, this is insane, I think. But since Nihilus is in the format now, I think that makes it where Phantasme is a little bit worse. I think it's better than these, but I think you'll probably see it in some side decks, but not in all side decks. Contexy, I'm sorry, you're really bad. You maybe had a chance in the last format with Ryzel, but a lot, again, like I was saying, Ryzel is now playing a lot of engines in their deck, so it makes it where this doesn't do as much as you want it to do anymore. I'm going to put it like up here, but it's still pretty bad, just because this is probably just a link fodder material to go into Moon or something like that, so not the greatest in the world. Marionette Might is terrible, or any cards like it as well, just any monster that discards itself to take control of a certain type. It's just bad. I'm sorry. It's better than Token Collector, I guess. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, this is a pretty terrible card. Now on to more of the board breaker stuff. Crossout Designator. Most side decks, for sure. It's probably going to be up there with Lancia, just because Game 2s and Game 3s, a lot of people are going to be putting in the crossouts to make sure when they go first, they can play through like certain hands, like Malice. It's for sure going to be siding at crossout, just so they can stop the, the artifact Lancia as well. So like the crossout's going to be for sure in most side decks, even some main decks as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in some main decks, but we're going to keep it in most side decks. Called by the Grave. This is going to be in some main decks for sure. It's probably going to be like nearly at the top, I would say, of some main decks. I wouldn't put it in most main decks, but I would put it at the some main decks. Called by is just insane. I think the only problem with it is at 1, which is unfortunate. It should be banned, in my opinion. Fuck this card. But yeah, it's still called by. It's still a really, really fucking dumb card as well. Even like the going second potential with it is still pretty solid as well. Triple Tactic Talents. This is going to be in most main decks for sure. I'm going to actually put it up here just because Talents is a dumb card. It really, really, really is. I really do like Talents a lot. It's one of the best board breakers in the game. In my opinion, I think this is a bannable card, but we'll actually see if that happens. But Triple Tactic Talents, really, really good card, deserves to be in most main decks. I saw Fenrir. Triple Tactics Thrust. If you're playing Thrust, it's going to be in the side decks, and it's probably going to be in most side decks as well, just to play something like the Sanctums and the Barriers and stuff like that. So, for sure, going to be in most side decks, I would say, in the next format as well. But this is not really going to be in any main decks at all, unless you're, like, on a very specific version of Malice where you're playing, like, the Striker stuff, or if you're on, like, the board-breaking or Ryzel Mitsuragi deck as well. That's like the only 2 decks I can think of that can play the Thrust in the main deck. But besides that, I think most of it will be in the side deck. Castria Fenrir. Again, if it's just Fenrir by itself, I don't think it's good. But if you're playing it with like the Unicorn and the Birth to go on top of it as like an engine, I think it's really good. So I think it's going to go in some main decks just because obviously that engine is getting played. But if it's just Fenrir by itself, it'd probably go down way lower. But this is for sure going to be in some main decks just because it's an engine piece as well. Dino Wrestler Pagertops, you're at 3 now, buddy, but you just haven't done anything. I think this is in niche. I think it's probably like near the top of niche, but it hasn't been really doing that much anymore. Lava Golem, again, it's one of those cards like, it doesn't do as much. You'll probably see it in some side decks, like some rogue side deck stuff, like Labyrinth, for example, will probably side deck this, but yeah, I don't know. It's not the greatest in the world anymore. Kaijus, same thing. Like, it's still okay, but I think there's just better options in it. I'm gonna actually put you in niche as well. I think Pankratops, yeah, I'm gonna put it there. Kurikara Divine Carnate, I'm sorry, you're just the same thing. You're just a little bit worse as well. I'm actually put you like down there as well, still in the niche category in my opinion. Book of Eclipse, this is a weird one. Got a little bit worse because this used to be like the really good Ryzel hit, but now that Eclipse Twins is in the format, if you go Book of Eclipse, they can just go detonator target itself, pop it, then the Eclipse Twins will bring back the detonator, right? I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think you'll probably see it in a lot of main decks, maybe? Nah, I would say most side decks, probably. I don't know. It's a card that's falling it off, I would say. It was pretty popular in the last format, but I think just because of something like the Eclipse and people are playing like the Mitsuragi stuff, I don't think it's the greatest in the world either. I still think it'll probably be played. I just don't think it'll be played as much as it was in the last format as well. Book of Moon is just strictly worse. This will go into the niche category for sure. Forbidden Droplet. This is a main deckable card in this format. I'm not going to lie. I want to put it in most main decks. I'm going to be honest with you, because it does prevent something like the Eclipse Twin. So if you can go Droplet, send a monster, it negates Detonator, and they can't pop the Detonator because they can't respond with monster. It makes it where the Eclipse can't bring it back, which is really good. I think the Droplet is really good this format. I think it actually does belong to be in most main decks for sure. Still a couple cards here. I know I've been talking for a little bit. Let's actually kind of skip Dark Ruler No More. Yeah, it may be some side decks. I don't think it's the greatest in the world. Super Polymerization, kind of the same thing, probably in some side decks. Ultimate Slayer is really, really good. I do like Ultimate Slayer, but a lot of people are trying to make Dweller now, so it makes it a little bit worse because the send target probably won't trigger, but I think you'll probably still see this in most side decks for sure. Let me actually put Eclipse down here. Let me put the Charmy up there. Yeah. Mulcharmy. This is a very specific card, but I do think this will probably see some side deck play for sure. I think it's better than this. I think it probably goes up here. Again, this is only specifically if you're probably playing like the Fiendsmith package where you can really play the Mulcharmy, but I still think it's solid. I think the only problem with it is Duo Drive kind of fucks this up because the Duo Drive makes the attack go higher for them. Makes it where, since it doesn't count original attack, it kind of fucks up your targets. But I think some side decks is still pretty good for us as well. Yeah, Mulcharmy is still a decent card, don't get me wrong, but probably in some side decks. Herald of the Abyss, I'm sorry, there's just strictly better cards in it right now, so I think it's probably in niche. The mind control stuff, I'll put all of them into like some side decks, but again, falls in the same category of it dies to the Eclipse Twins because you'll probably target the detonator pop itself, the Eclipse Twins will bring it back, and you know, you just wasted a card for them to just get back detonator anyway. So I'm going to put all that in probably in some side decks. Econ is strictly worse because you have to tribute a guy for it, so I'm going to put this in niche as well. Regeki used to be really, really good, but I don't think it's really the greatest in the world just because Raizo can protect itself and stuff like that now, so I'm going to put this in niche, unfortunately, and Dark Hole is just a little bit worse as well. With that, Cosmic Cyclone is also fallen off. There's really no spell traps you really want to hit anymore, but you'll probably see some side decks, and people might be scared of Runic or something like that, but that's pretty much it. Lightning Storm, it's just fallen off as well. Put this up here. Let me actually put Econ like down here. Yeah, keep it like that. Feather Duster is kind of the same way. I'd put it in niche as well, just there's not that many spell trap or like many decks that you have to worry about the spell trap removal. Evenly Matched might be good. I'm going to put it in some side decks. I'm going to put it like up here, just because, you know, there's not that many Omni Negates in the format, so Evenly might do something, especially if Malice moves away from the Terahertz package and stuff like that as well. So I'm going to keep this in some side decks. I think it's a little bit better than people are giving credit for, but I don't think you'll see much of it in the tournament. Deep Barrier, most side decks, is going to be up there with Triple Tactics, Thrusts as well. I don't have Sanctum on here, so Sanctum should be up here with that as well, but again, Sanctum's only there for the Lancia anyway, so yeah. If I had Sanctum, it would be right next to D-Barrier. Daruma, it's not the greatest. You might see some people side deck it with the Thrust, but it's not the greatest in the world. I'll put it like there. Why not? We'll put it there. DDG might be okay. I'll put it in most side decks. I'll put it in some side decks. I'll put it a little bit higher. Maybe like that. I'll put it like that. But again, this is more for that Triple Tactic Thrust target as well. Floodgates, Anti-Spell, Fragrance. Again, the Floodgates, you'll probably see some people side deck them. So Anti-Spell, Skill Drain, Tikaboo, Rivalry, and Gozen Match. Gozen Match is actually, yeah, I can see Gozen Match actually being okay. So like the Floodgates, you'll probably see some people side deck them. But again, they're at 1, so you're not likely to see them that much anyway. So that is it for my tier list. Sorry, I did go on a little bit of a ramble, kind of hurried up at the end there, but this is my tier list. Most main decks, let me make sure you guys can see it. Yeah, we're good. Most main decks: Infinite Impermanence, Ash Blossom, Fuwalos, Triple Tactics Balance, Droplet, Nib, and Effect Veiler being the least impactful will still probably be in most main decks. I think that's pretty fair. Some main decks called by the Bystials, Droll, Ghost Org, Impulse, Purge, and the Castria stuff. Yeah, that makes sense to me as well. Most side decks: Lancia, Crossout, Thrust, D-Barrier, Ultimate Slayer, Shifter, Mulcharmy Nihilist, and Book of Eclipse. I think I agree with that. I should probably have XYZ Encore in here as well. So if XYZ Encore was in the tier list, it would be in most side decks as well. In the some side decks, like you'll probably see a couple lists maybe, but not all lists are going to really be playing this in their side decks, are Purulia, Phantasme, Evenly, DDG, Mellotronus, Spooky Dogwood, Chaos Hunter, Daruma Cannon, Lava Golem, Dark Ruler No More, Super Poly, Mind Control, Change of Heart, Snatch Steal, Cosmic, Anti-Spell, Skill Drain, Tikaboo, Rivalry, and Gozen. And in niche, I'm not saying they're bad, but probably not the best in this format, so you probably won't see them at all, is Gamma, Delta, Lightning Storm, Feather Duster, Regeki, Dark Hole, Book of Moon, Pankratops, Econ, Herald of the Abyss, Kaiju, any Kaijus, Contact C, Kurikara, Divine Incarnate, Rescue Ace Impulse, DD Crow, Ghost Bell, Ghost Reapers, or any Marionette type card, and Token Collector. I'm still going to put Ghost Bell up here. I think this is the one, like, maybe it's better than I'm thinking it is. I just don't know with all these cards in the format as well. I don't know how much you want to put Ghost Bell in your, like, main deck or side decks and stuff like that. But that is it for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe for more content on the channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.